Oh, hold on, my Siri's activated for some reason.
Oh, I didn't get that.
Siri is showing me. You can't hear this in my ear. Siri has just shown me. I'm not kidding. It's just said, here are some images of Billie Piper on the web, and it showed me 14 pictures of Billie Piper. I didn't know it could even do that.
Oh my God, we are not cutting this out. We are not cutting this out.
I was so jarring. I was halfway through my point. It was like, here are some pictures of Billie Piper from the web. And I was like, Anyway.
We're keeping that in.
Good evening, Sam. Welcome to your first week of being 26.
26 years old. Do you know what? I actually have felt like I've been 26 for about a year. Whenever anyone asked me how old I was like, I'm 26. And then I was like, no, I'm not. I'm a youthful 25.
I've said this. I round up every time I round up. And I think it's a really good way of being, because I already now think I'm probably 28.
You've gone on record on the podcast saying you're 28.
I've told everyone I'm 27 for a long time now. I found that years have got a lot better as they've gone by, but pretty consistently. So I think great things to come. Great things to come.
Well, honey, talking about great things to come, the Rolling Stone cover. We're getting back onto Doctor Who now. Back onto Doctor Who.
It's the 10th of July, and the Rolling Stone cover with Ncuti Gatwa came out this afternoon. And I had just finished work. I was still in the office when the stuff came out, and I stayed a full extra 45 minutes just so I could crop all the photos into the right dimensions. I posted on Threads. I posted on Twitter. I posted on Insta. By the way, we're not a super reliable news source. We're very sometimes we'll have a good burst where we post all the quotes, all the high-res pictures, and then we'll take maybe a month off where we just post the birthdays.
Well, I feel like...
Happy birthday, Carol Ann Ford, and no other developments.
Well, it's funny because Doctor Who news, I feel comes in such peaks and valleys where you'll get so much all at once, especially when they're filming, because things will be coming out. Especially when they started filming series 14, things were coming out every other day, and it was such a heavy news time. And then you go through a month where not much new stuff comes out, so it's our feed just becomes I think it was John Sim's birthday today, date of recording, and so it's happy birthday, John Sim. Nothing.
We've gone through periods where they had 4 or 5 castings in a week. And then Doctor Who magazine will come out, and that's its whole own thing about things that get revealed there. We had that period where Murray Gold got cast really close to, not cast, they didn't cast Murray Gold, but Murray Gold got announced as rehired. And there was a bunch of other stuff that came out around that time, and it was just really hard to keep up with it. But anyway, the pictures that came out in the Rolling Stone today were just mind-blowing. And the things that Ncuti said as well about I am the Doctor, which really wasn't just a flashy phrase, the way it was described. Let me find the quote, because it was really the most beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. As a child, Gatwa and his family fled Rwanda, escaping the genocide. They settled in Scotland. This person, so this is his quote, this person survived the genocide. This person fits in everywhere and nowhere. I am the Doctor. The Doctor is me. I decided that I had to get this role. This goes hard. This goes hard.
And do you know what's really funny is when they announced... So I know that before they announced he was the Doctor, the day of, do you remember they did the 2 hearts and the blue and the diamond? And everyone was like, oh my God, Ncuti Gatwa was probably going to be cast in Doctor Who. And I think you and me both assumed he was going to be the companion, because in Sex Education, he's the sidekick. He's the lead's friend. And we were like, oh, he's probably going to be cast as a companion. That's interesting. And then he got cast as the Doctor, and we were all really surprised by the casting. Yeah. And this was over a year ago now. Ncuti will debut in the 60th specials as the Doctor. So he will have been cast for a year and a half before we actually get to see him on screen. And he already, to all of us, just from filming leaks and from the little that we've seen online, he is the Doctor. He is the perfect casting of the Doctor. And I don't mean to undermine David Tennant coming back, because I think that's its own thing and that's a really big deal as well. But I just know that we are all tooth and nail fighting to watch Ncuti on screen.
Baby, I think it's okay to undermine David Tennant. I think he's had his moment in the sun. But
that's such a rude thing to say. I will not stand for this kind of Tennant slander.
No, I adore him. He's a very
non-binary ally ever.
He is. He's a real ally to the trans plus community, and we love him very much. I agree with you. When Ncuti was announced, I trusted the people making the show so much that I knew it would be good. But it's like you say, everything that's come out in the last 6 months just sells it for you. It's gone from I'm interested to see what he's going to do with this, to now it's like, I can't wait for this. I need this. And I think this could be my favourite Doctor because we've seen him do humour so well. And even the little, like, I mean, he's done ads and things, right? Recently, he did like the BA safety ad that starts when, like, you know, when they're doing like the safety check at the start.
Yeah.
I mean, his cameo in that is what, 15 seconds, and I was like, sold.
Yeah. Do you remember when the first Barbie trailer was released, and he's in the background of, I think, like one shot, and everyone was just sharing it, and they were like, "Oh my god, Shooty! Oh my god!"
All he does in that video, he lifts an armpit, and that was enough.
He did.
That
was enough for us. Sexiest Doctor confirmed.
Woo! One of the other final things before we do move on to this episode today that was brought up in the Rolling Stone interview, which I thought was really brilliant. Shooty says that he watched every episode of Doctor Who from 2005 on in the space of a week in a massive binge. I'm not sure that's possible to do. I think what's probably happened, that I had heard alluded to as well, is that Russell had drawn up something of a watch list. And I imagine he's seen a lot of the highlights along the way. My question would be, do you think today's episode, New Earth, showed up in that list? And if so, what do you think he thought of it?
3,000%. I think I can pinpoint like when this rewatch was happening. Do you remember just after he was cast as the Doctor, he did like a talking head interview, and they said if you can visit one alien, who would it be? And he was like, "Oh, I think the Beast would be a really cool one." And it was quite a deep cut for like someone, because he's gone on the record and he said in Rolling Stone as well that like he wasn't like a religious Doctor Who viewer, but then after this rewatch, he's become like a lifelong fan. I think it would have been like just after his cast. I think that Russell sort of gave him a pack and was like, here's what you missed on Glee. Yeah. And I definitely think that New Earth was one that on there, because this is a great episode.
Yeah.
But before we dive into this camp classic of an episode, I just want to give a quick shout out to one of our listeners. Now, this is @_NickDraws on Twitter. He tweeted us today, and we love, genuinely, if any of you reach out to Wholala on any of our platforms, especially Threads, our new favourite thing. Definitely Alice's new favourite thing.
Threads.
Get on Threads. It's always me and Alasdair. Like, this is very much like a homemade podcast, and it's always me and Alasdair that will see them. And Nick tweeted us saying, "My non-Doctor Who fandom boyfriend has asked me for the name of that, quote, fun podcast we had on." And then he said, "The fabulous Wholala." Thank you, Nick. So he can listen to it on a long car journey, and has proceeded to binge it on the full 4-hour trip. Reader, my job is done. And I just want to say thank you to Nick and your non-Who boyfriend, who I hope will now be a convert to Who.
Truly, like, the most touching feedback I can think of. Can you imagine, like, a non-Who fan being like, "Oh, let's put that on for 4 hours. I want to give you a big smooch for that."
My boyfriend is a non-Who listener, and he doesn't listen to our podcast.
He does not listen. Mine doesn't listen.
That was so cute. Also, you should go follow Nick on his Twitter and Instagram. It's @NickSometimesDraws on Instagram and @_NickDraws on Twitter. He does this amazing Doctor Who fan art. I really, really love them. There's one he has pinned to the top, which is the Fugitive Doctor and Carvanista. I'm just showing us.
Yes.
Now. And it's so
I love the glasses.
Like, I think he also did some lockdown comics. I think he did one of like how the Trickster met the woman in Turn Left and like presented her with the Time Beetle. And I'm like, this is like, that's canon to me. That's my headcanon. Yeah.
I love that.
Go follow Nick on our socials. Thank you for listening every week, Nick. We love to see it.
Thank you.
But with no further ado, this week we are turning the time rotor back in time on our TARDIS and visiting episode 1 of series 2 of Doctor Who, New Earth.
Yes, New Earth. Somehow this feels even older than series 1. Somehow this feels even more historic to me. We'll get into the reasons why.
We'll get into why. I think for me, I don't know about you, so all of series 1 to 4, I would, growing up, basically just rewatch them all. I like no skips. I would rewatch the entire seasons back to back to back. There's a few episodes that I'd be excited to look back on because I don't remember them as freshly off the top of my head. I feel like season 3 has a few, maybe a couple of series 2, but this one especially was one that I would rewatch a lot. So you were talking to me about this when you were doing your rewatch, then you were like, "Oh my God, I forgot how good this was. Like, I forgot how funny this bit is." And I was like, I could probably recite you the entire script from memory.
I think the thing for me, I'm very visual and I'm biased towards episodes that I like the look of very much. And I struggle with episodes that I don't think look good. So like the Christmas Invasion for me, which immediately precedes this one, is a great balance of that because it's got the story, it's got the heart, it's got the character, it's got the comedy, but it looks crisp. It looks good. And the step down to this one, the CGI, the lighting, the sets, all of it, it's all a bit jarring and it's all a bit cheap. And for a series opener, it feels weak.
I think you and me are going to butt heads on this one because I think also, maybe because I'm an industry insider and I do work in television, I don't know if I've ever mentioned it on this podcast, I sympathise with sort of low budget TV. And it's not saying this was low budget, but we have to remind ourselves this was only series 2 of a show. Like they wouldn't have, you know how Doctor Who's now probably been greenlit like years in advance. I don't think that was the case there. They were very much taking it on a year by year basis. So it was only the second series of a show. It was made in 2005 on a TV BBC budget. So for the time it was, I don't think that I hold too much like disdain towards the CGI. And also one thing that I will talk about more later is that Doctor Who, especially in this era, was aware that the CGI wasn't the best. They couldn't do exactly what they wanted to. Like you saw the Nestine consciousness. So they would more often than not lean into practical effects and prosthetics. And this episode has a lot of great practical effects and prosthetics, which I will definitely dive into.
That's true. So this one was shown on the 15th of April 2006 and filmed in the summer of 2005, which just feels ridiculously long ago now, 18 years ago.
I know. Well, they would have been filming this as series 1 was being aired, because I think that started in like March, and they probably started shooting this in I think April, May.
Yeah, which is a really weird thought.
I know. It's weird that I always think of like early Doctor Who with the New Who by the year it came out. So it's always weird being like, oh no, they were filming series 1 in 2004.
Yeah, I think of them filming in the year it was released.
Yeah, not the case.
It's ridiculous.
But yes, so this episode was directed by James Hawes and, of course, written by Russell T Davies. It reached 8.62 million viewers, which especially for the time I think is very good for a returning season, and has an IMDb score of 7.4 out of 10. A very respectable 7.4, I feel.
That's a very respectable 7.4. On the Gallifrey subreddit, a lot of people do re-reviews and re-watches, and sometimes they do polls on there as well to see what people think of them. This episode, not a lot of people thought this was like a terrible episode, but a lot of people felt it was kind of mid. A lot of people didn't love this episode.
I love this episode. I'm sorry. I think this is maybe going to be one of those instances that we've spoken about where like I find it difficult to remove nostalgia from the enjoyment. Like I'm sure if I sat down with my boyfriend to watch this, he would probably think this is kind of crappy TV. Certain episodes I think are endearing in the way they do it. He actually really enjoyed Whatever Happened to Sarah Jane. We watched that together last week for the podcast, and it reminded him a lot of Charmed, which is that kind of like low budget American like monsters and like magic show. Whereas I think it's the sci-fi element that he doesn't love. So I don't think he would love this episode as much as I do, but I can't help it. New Earth apologist.
Well, let's get into a recap of this week's episode, and then we can talk about those sweet, sweet highs and lows.
Absolutely.
The newly regenerated 10th Doctor and Rose take a trip further than they've ever gone before to the year 5,023,023. They land on New Earth and visit a hospital to see their dying friend, the Face of Bo. The hospital is run by the Sisters of Plenitude, humanoid cats who can supposedly cure anything. The Doctor and Rose soon get separated, and Rose is captured by an old rival, Lady Cassandra, who's out to get revenge for her death in Series 1.
Assisted by her servant Chip, Cassandra uses a psychograph to take over Rose's brain and tries to use the Doctor to help unmask the truth about the hospital. They discover that the sisters have been growing a human farm known as the Flesh to test new cures for diseases. Cassandra plans to blackmail them for cash, but when this backfires, she releases all of the flesh, threatening to create a pandemic.
The hospital goes into quarantine and the Flesh start to infect everyone until there's only one floor left. Cassandra jumps between the Doctor, Rose, and one of the Flesh's bodies before finally agreeing to help him save the hospital. To help save the day, the Doctor then creates a concoction of medicine which he sprays onto the Flesh. They spread this and end up curing each other, creating a stable and new form of life. The sisters are arrested, and the Face of Bo tells the Doctor they will meet once more to share a great secret.
Chip has survived, and Cassandra releases Rose by going into his body, despite knowing she'll die soon as his body is too weak to sustain her. Though the Doctor can't help her, as a parting gift he allows her to visit her younger self, where she tells her that she is beautiful.
Gorgeous.
Oh, isn't that nice?
Isn't that nice? Okay, Sam, kick us off. Go on.
Okay, well, I'm going to go in for a high because I have a lot more highs than lows for this episode.
Mm-hmm.
To start chronologically, I love the opening for this episode. I know that people kind of dig into this episode and they say it's not a great series opener. I disagree. I think that it both continues from the Christmas special well. Like, if you're paying attention, there's a line where Rose is hugging Jackie and Mickey, and Jackie's like, oh, I'll have to call Mo, and Rose's like, never mind, Mo, which is just like a little teaser to when they were going to call cousin Mo to stay at hers during the Christmas invasion, which you would only pick up if you were paying attention. But it also feels like the start of something new, not to quote High School Musical, but it really isn't. The start of something new. And the way that we see like the gorgeous shots across the TARDIS console, and it's like the Doctor's sort of learning it. Like, you can tell he's touching these controls for the first time. He hasn't taken the TARDIS on a trip yet. He's feeling the controls. He's sort of becoming one with the TARDIS. It's like muscle memory. And you feel like the Doctor and Rose are about to go on a really fun adventure. And I've heard this comment be made about Doctor Who in general, that they think that the companions don't have fun, like they come out traumatized, which they do sometimes, but that they're not having fun, and that we want to see more of like the Doctor and the companion just having fun adventures. And I feel like this is one of them. Like, the Rose is just so eager, she's like, where are we going? And the Doctor says, further than we've ever gone before. And you can tell they're both just having fun and enjoying being with each other. And I feel especially with the Doctor and Rose, there are so many adventures that we don't get to see that, like, if this one hadn't gone wrong, this probably would have just been another one of those adventures that we didn't see, where they're just out having fun.
That's really true. You do get that sense. Part of that sense probably comes from the fact that we read so many books, audiobooks, consumed so much media around it that we're like, they went on so many journeys. Yeah, baby, because we read all the spin-offs. But yes.
The Stone Rose was great.
The Stone Rose was a great story. I listened to the whole damn thing. I agree, though. I get what you're saying. It does feel like they spent a long time together. It's there in the subtext, I think. That's also a high for me in this episode. I was going to say, the opening I actually think is really, really strong too. I love that look you get at the Doctor kind of feeling the console and getting comfortable with it for the first time and almost like grinning to himself, just enjoying it and getting to know her. You've got the kind of series 2 TARDIS lighting as well, which is very green. Very green. I
hate that. Yeah, bright green.
It's cozy, if nothing else. And I was thinking as I watched it, you know what? I wouldn't be mad about this. It's a bit of a shooty intro as well, updated for the year 2024, of course. But, these close-up angles, first you get a look at his shoes, then you kind of get a look at kind of his hands on the console, and finally you get a look at him kind of grinning at it. I thought it was like, oh, it's quite a nice little build. And there's so much not said here as well. You know, we say a lot that family was so strong in RTD Doctor Who. There's a lot there, kind of the emotions are there. They don't say it, but you can feel that kind of the Doctor and Rose have been together for a long time now. Mickey and Jackie still aren't quite okay with it. She's hesitant to let Rose go. She's kind of faffing and worrying, and she's kind of giving her a final hug like it's kind of a kid going off to uni. Yeah. Mickey's a bit reluctant about the whole thing. He says,
Rose
love
and Mickey
you.
need to break the hell up. They have not broken up by this point.
They haven't. They're still official. Like, in Mickey's head at least, he's like, love you, and she just goes, bye. Like, it's there as well. Like,
it's quite well known that Rose doesn't like Mickey.
No, but they have like 4 lines, and inside that is everything. Like, they managed to condense that into like 30 seconds, and it's great. Like, I really
writing,
like this opening. It is, and that gigantic grin that she gives him as well. The Doctor, when she joins him at the console, and he kind of tells further than we've ever gone before, and she's so excited by that. Yeah, it's great.
Go on, you give me another one of your highs for this episode.
For me, there are a lot of highs. The lows almost distract more than they should, and I think we need balance. So for me, something is interesting here about the meaning of the story. So in a sense, a bit like a regeneration story often is, and we've kind of already had David Tennant's regeneration story here, because we have the Christmas invasion, and that's his like, I'm a whole new man, baby, who am I? And this time, it usually we kind of move on from that point now, and they're a little more kind of just like showing off who they are. But we get something here because it's an episode about vanity and holding on to something that's died. Cassandra very much wants to stay in the past. Her whole thing, her whole shtick is about not aging, remaining pure, having herself kind of tucked and trimmed. Even when she comes back to life, she has another piece of her skin from her ass kind of stretched into the frame.
Yeah.
And she looks identical to how she used to look. The world evolves around her, and she refuses to move on with it. So there's something here, ending again in her having to finally accept her death, which is quite interesting to me, because 10's arc, which is only just beginning here, is all about his vanity and his refusal to die. And I think it might be like maybe the first time, maybe I'm wrong, it is one of the first times he is referred to here by one of the matrons as the lonely god from kind of legend, who the face of Bo will refer to. So we start to get this idea of kind of the grandiose nature of the Doctor as more than just a traveller, but he's a legend, he's a myth throughout time, yada, 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 yada. Rose's arc, not so much. Not much of a parallel here, other than, to those who are very attentive, she has to hold on to a lever that is resisting when she has to hold the lever on top of the lift. And ultimately, a lever will kill her in Doomsday. So that
was such a tenuous. I was really hanging on to the end of that, and that was such a tenuous. I was like, okay, I see where you're going.
Similar thing.
For a second, I thought you were going to say this is the first time we truly see the Doctor's vanity, and I was like, I don't know if you've ever seen. Have you ever seen the scene before the second Doctor regenerates?
Like a little bit.
So he's put on trial by the Time Lords, and they say your sentence is that you have to regenerate, but we'll let you choose who you turn into next. And they basically show him a slideshow of all these different guys. Again, they're all white and male. And he's like, oh, he's too fat, he's too thin, he's too old, he's too young. And I was like, that was the first time we see the Doctor's vanity. But no, I think that's a really good point. I think that 10 is quite often known as the vain Doctor, especially towards the end of his tenure, and it's a really interesting parallel. I think that you'll have someone like Cassandra who does everything within her power to stay young and almost like relevant and pure, and he has the luxury of that being part of his physiology. He can be young again if he gets old, and he can get old again if he feels too young. And it's something about regeneration where it's not just how much of it is a survival method and how much of it is you using this to your benefit to enjoy your life. What's so wrong with her doing it what's wrong with her doing it is she kills a lot of people to get there. But it's a really interesting comment, I think, on the character at wider. Well, to bring it back round to Cassandra, now that we've gotten her, I think Cassandra really grew on me. I think as a kid, again, this episode is so like ingrained to me with nostalgia. I am aware I cannot look at this like blindly. I as I've said in the podcast, used to collect Doctor Who action figures, and I just am waiting to be financially stable enough that I can do that again. I'm sorry to my poor boyfriend. And the amount of variance that Cassandra had as an action figure, I don't know if you quite know how like deep into this goes. So you got a Cassandra action figure, which is from her in series 1. Then you got a Cassandra series 2 figure of her with like the rusty like frame. Then nice they released another version called Cassandra Destroyed, which is the rusty frame without Cassandra in it. And yes, I did pay for that as a separate action figure. And I think the original Cassandra figure was one of the earliest ones that they released, so I used to play with that a lot as a kid. So I think I've just always loved Cassandra, even though she might be a bit of a one-dimensional villain, if you pardon the pun.
Away! But she's a little flat.
It fell a little bit flat for you. Oh god, you can see right through her. No, but I mean visually anyway, like as Cassandra, I actually loved how Cassandra looks in these episodes. I know that people read into the CGI and like they didn't update it between seasons. I don't really care. But again, to harken back to the point I was saying earlier, I think this episode is one of the great ones that walks the line well between the use of CGI and the use of practical prosthetics, where Cassandra is an entirely CG character, basically. And it doesn't look too bad because I think they understand the limitations. She's deliberately quite flat. She's deliberately doesn't move much. I think when you see things like the Slovene, that's where it really jumps out that like, oh, this isn't very good. But then you see all these amazing practical things. The Sisters of Plenitude's makeup, I love. It's such a clever use of makeup. I'm so glad that species comes back in series 3. The face of Bo is a character I think would definitely be CGI if it was made today. And I love that it is a practical model there in the room. Also the flesh. The flesh is one of the moments where it really does show its age, where if it's just a flesh talking and moving around, it's a practical prosthetic, and I think that looks quite good. But then in the scenes where they're infecting other people, it's hard to not just see them as like a cutout in front of a green screen, staying very still as they're clearly having this thing like faded on top of their body. So like that's where it gets a bit dicey. But I do think this episode walks the line well of like using CGI sparingly and having amazing prosthetics where they don't.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with that. I think the practical effects in Doctor Who have always been very good. And anyone who watches Doctor Who Confidential knows that they usually kind of assign a fairly big segment of every episode behind the scenes to talk about the practical effects, which I used to love. And I'm so glad I think an equivalent show is coming back now, because I think it really does justice to all of that work that happens behind the scenes and kind of the craft that goes into all of that, which is brilliant. And yeah, Doctor Who's practical effects have been very, very good for years. The costumes and the masks, and sadly those things don't last forever, but I mean it says a lot that you can even put those things for a period into kind of Doctor Who experiences and exhibitions, and they survive like all of this travel and still look good enough that you'd want to pay a ticket to come and look at it up close. You know, that's how impressive some of the stuff is. I mean, on Cassandra, I did notice they hadn't updated the CGI between series 1 and 2, and I thought, now that is a choice, because a joke that people were making in the noughties was about Cassandra's CGI. And I remember watching someone on YouTube in the noughties saying, I just couldn't get past episode 2 of Doctor Who and the way that, you know, Cassandra's CGI looks. And they used the same damn model in the second series. They were like, we're going to go back. We're going to use that character again.
But what would they have done? Like,
and
we're
not going to change a damn thing.
Well, had a big arse cheek on her face?
Ideally, no. You know what, homework.
You're talking at your ask not.
Homework, because I know we have a lot of talented people in the Who community who know how to use Blender. I want to see someone do a really creepy and genuinely believable skin texture Cassandra, like a body horror Cassandra made for the current year. If someone would like to develop that and share that with us, we'd be very grateful. Now, Cassandra, I mean, character note here. Great character. Silly character. Great character.
Camp character.
You know, camp, incredible. Like the camp, arguably the campest character we've ever had in Doctor Who, I'd suggest.
Yeah.
Something I really like is that everyone tries to do a Cassandra impression, and no one actually gets it right. I mean, there's a lot of really funny posh people in this episode. Very few. One person sounds like Cassandra. The one person who sounds like Cassandra in this episode is Chip at the end.
Yeah.
No one else
he really
sounds like Cassandra. Everyone's doing a different impression of just a posh person. It's funny because Billie Piper's natural voice, I think, is quite RP English, and she's trying to do something a bit more London. That I think, you know, as Rose, she's doing that a lot more. And when we get to series 4, it's really, really funny because she's not only forgotten how to do that voice, but she's had a lot of dental work and potentially lip Botox that means that she can't really do it. So she's like, now we're in trouble. Anyway, to the point. Sorry. Rose. Okay, so apparently, yeah, Billie Piper wanted to do a bit more of a comic character. She does it beautifully, by the way. She is clearly very good at doing comic characters. And I'm really glad that she got a chance to flex this a bit. It's really, really good. Her accent that comes more naturally to her is more of an RP English. In this one, she has to do a bit more of a London accent as Rose. So I think actually the Cassandra voice probably comes a bit easier to Billie Piper. And the performance is incredibly funny. There's a lot of really funny lines here that I think work in the way that Billie Piper is delivering them that wouldn't actually necessarily be as funny as Cassandra, the skin Cassandra, the Zoe Wanamaker Cassandra. Sure. So there was a line that I missed the first time. So like the line that you know is, oh baby, it's like living inside a bouncy castle. And then the follow-up to that, which I never caught, was Chip going, the mistress is beautiful, and her going, absolutement.
Oh my god! What I love, I love her first when she looks at herself and when she's like arms, fingers, hair. Like it's the first time she's had a body in years, and she's like, let me see. And she looks in the mirror, and I wouldn't use this word in my vocabulary. I don't know if it's a slur, but she just goes, oh my god, I'm a chav.
Which is not a word we'd have in the year 5 billion.
No, I was thinking
but yeah, incredibly funny. No, my actual favorite line I'm sorry, I'm jumping to my favorite quotes now because this is
No,
really
no, I
high.
want to hear them.
This high is simply, I'm not going to do any of this justice. You have to go back and watch the episode. It's always our advice. Everything Billy says is Cassandra. I like that her first words when she becomes conscious as a human, Cassandra taking over Rose's body, goes, moisturize me, just on the floor as Billy Piper, kind of fetal position, kind of coming to her feet.
Yeah.
Moisturize me. She doesn't even need moisturizing anymore. It's just instinct. It's just kind of like, it's like code for I don't feel well.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really funny. And then when her phone rings, which she somehow knows how to answer as well, which is quite funny. She doesn't even have to like look down at which button it is. She knows how to answer the phone. Thought that was quite funny. She goes, how does she speak? And he goes, Old Earth Cockney. And she goes, Watcher. And that was like one of my favorite bits. And then later when the doctor's going out, what's with the voice? Oh, I don't know, just larking about New Earth, new me.
And then he's like, I can talk. New doctor.
New doctor.
Not you just. But I think like Cassandra in every one of her forms in this episode is great. I love that when she sees the skin Cassandra for the first time, Cassandra goes, peekaboo, and then goes, what do you think I'm going to do? Flap you to death?
When she becomes Rose, in saying, goodbye, trampoline. Hello, Blondie. She has an awareness that she is a trampoline. And this whole time she's being wheeled around, she knows she's a trampoline, which is quite funny.
Yeah.
Like the whole time there's like an awareness, like despite the face she puts on it, that she was probably like a few surgeries back was like, I fucked up. Like I went
when you go too far and it's just trying to fix it.
You're just it's like cutting a fringe too high and you just keep cutting and there's no way of bringing it back. She's been doing that for a decade.
And then, like, when she goes into the doctor's body, I don't want to, like, stay on Cassandra too long because there's so many amazing characters in this episode, but when she goes into the doctor and David Tennant does his Cassandra, and it's like, this is new. 2 hearts. Oh, baby, I'm beating out a samba. And you can tell that David Tennant is doing his utmost to make Billy break.
Yes,
and
yes.
he comes up and he's, like, holding on to his, like, imaginary boobs. He's like, I've been inside your head. You've been looking. Like it. And Billy's just like not looking at him. She's like, really smirking, and you can
foxy.
Tell. You a little bit foxy. It's just such a funny. See, oh my god, the doctor! What the hell would he do? And when Rose sees the ladder, and she's like, "I'm gonna go up," and he pushes her and goes, "Out of the way, Blondie." It's just so funny.
It's really good, and I'm glad they gave them both the chance to do it. It's a funny choice to do in a first episode, though, when we need to establish the Doctor's character, that we'd have like a decent chunk of it, him kind of like out of character with the whole like body swap bit. But we get plenty of the chance for him to establish himself and his range. Yeah, well, one thing, that's actually a really great way of putting it. One thing that I have as one of my notes for this episode is that you really do start to see the range of the 10th Doctor. And I like that you start to, this is an incredibly funny episode. This episode is a comedy, but you start to get inclinations of the rage and the fury of the Time Lord that you then see more in like later in the series, and especially in series 3. In the scene where the Doctor has realised that something's up with Rose and he's talking to the Sister of Plenitude, and he is staying very calm, and he says, he's like, okay, I can understand your vows. He's upset because of the flesh. He's upset that they are effectively killing this brand new species of life that didn't ask to get made. And he says, I can understand the flesh. I understand your vows. I understand the money. But one thing I don't understand is what have you done to Rose? And this cat's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he goes like, I'm staying very, very calm. And you should be wary of that when I'm very, very calm. And I thought that, like, I completely went over my head as a kid, but especially watching now, it really, like, hits you a bit. Like, it's like, oh my god, like you don't know what he's going to do next, and especially with him being a new Doctor, you really don't know what he's going to do next. And I like that he doesn't really get into like a big shouty mode, which you do then later see for the 10th Doctor, but it just gives you like a little taste. It's like there's a lot more under the surface of this like funny guy that we don't know about yet, and I thought that was really well put. Yeah, I like that as well, because we've had a lot of the humour, we've had a lot of the lightness, we're warming up to this guy, we're getting to like this guy, and then he goes angry mode, and it's intriguing, and we're like, where's the line with this guy? What's too much if you hurt Rose for him? So yeah, I agree with you. We get these nice flashes of darkness, and we kind of explore what he'll tolerate and kind of what he's willing to do, and the way it contrasts so much with his kind of light, silly kind of like, oh, little shop, I like a little shop, and then kind of like, I'll obliterate you and your friends kind of thing is quite like, switch up.
I know. I love that at the end of this episode, I feel like you don't often get law in Doctor Who, like as in like the law, and all the cats get arrested at the end.
Yeah.
That's like the resolution. They all go to jail.
All staff, please submit yourself for arrest.
What do you think of the Flesh in this episode? The Flesh as I don't even want to say villain, like as a victim, as a dangerous victim, I'll say.
Yeah, they did well with this, I think, because in a way, this is like a Doctor Who zombie episode, because they are zombies in the way that they kind of like come around the corners in the hospital going, and kind of clambering with their arms out. They are zombies functionally. But it'd be very easy to make them monsters, and they don't quite do that. They still kind of have like a sadness in their eyes.
Yeah.
I was thinking of that tweet, the kind of sadness you only see in a Eastern European gay porn.
True.
So, they do have that sadness in their eyes, and they kind of like sort of stumble around looking kind of, you feel a bit sorry for them. You don't want to touch them, but even someone who does get infected, you're afraid that someone's going to get touched by them. But even when someone does, the look in their eyes isn't just like, horror. It's kind of also like a sympathetic look, like, oh God, what happened to you?
There's two sort of moments in this episode. Also, when I was a kid, I was so scared of the Flesh that when this came out, I had to stop. I would rewatch this episode a lot, and I would have to stop at the moment where they opened the first pod to look at the Flesh. And it took me years to like, because I was about like 7 or 8 maybe when series 2 came out. It took me a few years before I was like, okay, I can watch this. But there's a couple moments in this that make me not like fear them as a villain or a monster of the episode. It's that I feel really sorry for them, which I think the Doctor feels from the get-go, because he doesn't necessarily see people's ailments as something to be afraid of or scared. It's always sympathy. It's the fact that the 2 words that they all know how to say, because the cat's kind of surprised they have a vocabulary. She's like, how can they even talk? Like, how they shouldn't be able to talk. We haven't taught them that. And all of them can say, help us, save us. And that's what they're saying as they go around the whole time. They're sort of whispering to people. They're trying to call out to people saying, help us, please save us. Yeah. And that it's not like, I'm going to bite you.
Like, no. Like and then when Cassandra goes into one of their heads,
that's
she comes
the second
out and
bit.
Says, she says, I have the exact quote. Don't worry about it. I'll bring it up right now.
I've got it in my note. You don't even have to look it up, baby. She sits there. She goes inside. For anyone who hasn't seen it, well, she's going in and out of the Doctor's bodies and Rose's bodies. And the Doctor says to her, I won't help you. They're trapped. And the Doctor says, I won't help you if you're in Rose's body. So she goes into one of the Flesh's body. And there's a funny moment where she's like, oh, good Lord, I look disgusting. And just at the last moment, she zaps back into Rose's body, and the Doctor's fuming, and he shouts, he goes, that is your last warning, Cassandra. And Rose, as Cassandra, just sits there stunned, and she goes, inside their head, they're so alone. They just keep reaching out just to hold us all those years, and they've never been touched. And that's the moment where the Doctor makes his peace with the fact that, at least for now, he'll let Cassandra stay in Rose's head, because she now knows what they're fighting for. All that time, she thought they were disgusting and gross, and don't let them go near me, and I have no remorse. And from that moment, that's what made her think, okay, I want to help. I want to help them.
That segues very nicely into one of my, I think, highs for this one. It is remarkable how RTD manages to, in 45 minutes, and we've said this before, 45 minutes is a real challenge, to do your exposition, your characters, set everything up, create a threat, expand on that, and tidy it all up in a neat package, and then zoom off to the next place at the end of it. You've got to get a lot done in a very short period of time. It does a great job, I think, juggling those meaty topics with the humour, the campy silliness, the whole body swapping thing. It happens in such rapid succession that I honestly would love to go back and make a supercut, just the tonal shift that occurs between scenes in this episode, because it is jaw-dropping. It is it is a whiplash happening.
Yeah.
It is like you said,
Tonal
sweet
whiplash
Lord.
is a good way of putting it.
Oh, sweet Lord, I look disgusting inside a possessed person's head, and then not 10 seconds later, inside her head, they're so alone. They keep reaching out just to hold us all their lives, and they've never been touched. Like 10 seconds apart.
I can literally see in my head, I would take like the clip of Mickey going like, I love you, and she's like, bye. Cut to the clip of, oh, I love this. Cut to the clip of screaming in a lift because you've got water on you. Cut to moisturize me lying on the floor. Cut to, but the stairs are gone. Cut to, help us, save us. Cut to, I look disgusting. Cut to, the doctor is in. Cut to, screaming down the lift. Cut to, I cured them. Cut to, the cats are being arrested. Cut to, it's okay, doctor, time to die. Cut to, someone do something, I think he's dying. Cut to Rose and her cunty haircut walking back into the TARDIS as they go.
This episode is such a roller coaster. Even just going from the, yep, still got it, to, this is your last chance, Cassandra.
It is tonal whiplash. But I think that's why I love it. It's a fun, silly episode. And also, I'm amazed you haven't brought this up yet. Can't pass Murray Gold's amazing music in this episode. I don't know, you'll know the name of this track. When they're going down the lift and it's like dun 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 dun.
Westminster Bridge, you fool.
Oh, it is Westminster Bridge. Yes, you're right.
It's Westminster Bridge. Westminster Bridge plays a couple times in this episode. It opens with Westminster Bridge, with the Doctor adjusting the consoles and everything like that. It doesn't sound the same because I think something's missing. The drum beat's not there. Something's not there. And they play it again when they go down the lift. They play Rose's theme at the start of this as well. I think a couple of times when they first arrive on New Earth and where they're lying on their picnic blanket or the Doctor's coat.
They're just lying on the grass, the apple grass. My
complaint about the soundtrack, now this will shock you, is that a comment made at the time, I remember there was like a Dead Ringers or something done, and one of the jokes they did, and it was set on the kind of Satan Pit episodes, there's a bit where the Doctor and Rose come out of the TARDIS, and he's like, what? She's like, I said, and they're like, I can't hear you because this music's so loud. And I was listening with, not to flex everyone, but I've got a couple surround speakers in my living room.
Oh, I know where you're going.
And it was loud, and I could hear it fine because the voices were coming from my TV, but the surround, which is normally quite quiet, the music was blasting for this one, and I was like, God, it is loud. And not only that, not a major problem, but the Christmas Invasion is orchestrated properly with the National Orchestra of Wales. This one, you can hear a lot of it is not. A lot of it is synthesized sounds, and going back, a lot of it sounds quite artificial. There is a lot of stuff now that people are doing on their own on YouTube that sounds more rich and more real, I think, like as fan soundtracks than what we get in this one. But that is not an issue that persists very long, and it's not all the way through. There we are.
Well, you heard it. Alistair hates the work to Murray Gold.
It's a little loud. It's a little loud. There was one more funny part with the use of Rose's theme. We hear Rose's theme, I think, first when they both step outside the TARDIS, and it's like da, 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 and it's beautiful and it makes sense. Then we cut to, I think, Cassandra doing devious things in her little kind of dungeon in the back of the hospital, and it's kind of campy and funny and silly and da, 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 da. And then we cut back and Rose's theme just blasts back on again, and it's almost a bit like and it almost sounds like no, we shouldn't have done that a second time. That was fine the first one. It's a bit too I get that. That's fair. Small criticism.
Fair. I see that.
Another mixed point for me, because frankly we haven't had enough hate. Let me make a couple of hater comments here, okay? Because it's been far too balanced and we're at nearly an hour. The CGI. Now we need to talk about the CGI because we've talked about just now Rose coming out of the TARDIS. Now for me, this is the scene that sticks so clearly in my head, it prevents me from even wanting to watch this one again because I hate the way the scene looks so much. Now, if you see the behind the scenes, if you see the confidential for this one, it's very apparent why the scene looks how it looks. When they do this scene of the Doctor and Rose first stepping out the TARDIS and they walk on the apple grass and they see the beautiful kind of skyline of New York in the distance, the way it's described, what they were aiming for was this like incredible alien skyline, a few kind of like planets hovering on the horizon, and they wanted to achieve this like retro 1930s New York look, but like in the future, and it was meant to look really staggering. In the end, I think it looks a little generic, homogenous space blob, and just looks a bit nowadays AI generated space, and isn't particularly memorable. And the other thing is that they filmed this at the tail end of summer, but in really bad, cloudy, windy weather in, can't remember exactly where it is, but it's just off Swansea on a cliff head. And I don't know if they just hadn't quite prepped for it, but I mean, in the confidential, they say this, they're like, so the weather's not great. The sound will probably all have to be done in post. So there's a great chance that all the lines we hear from the Doctor and Rose
I did think that. Yeah.
And like, can you imagine all the takes they have where like the Doctor and Rose's voices don't quite line up? And they're like, no, do that again. And as well, it feels like they've tried to like warm it up and brighten it up a little bit in post. But there's some really funny behind the scenes in Confidential where David Tennant breaks a few times when he looks at Rose. She kind of turns to him and goes, I love this. And he's like, it's just a face full of hair. She just turns to him.
It is incredibly windy. I think, again, I said we were going to butt heads and we will. So I now have a little gif of that scene where they're lying on the Doctor's coat looking out at New York. And I advise everyone listening to this podcast, please look up a picture of the skyline of New York while I'm talking about this. Right. I don't think it was an issue. You do it too. Get the picture up. Just look up New York on Google and get a picture of it up. I'm looking at the cityscape, and I actually think that it is not an issue of bad CGI. I love the futuristic cars flying over in what are like the imaginary roads into the city. The city itself has it like emulates New York. It has buildings that look as though they're in New York, and then also these weird alien, but there's a big like domed building. I love that there's a monorail coming from the city like out. My issue is not the CGI. I do have a big issue with it. My issue is that the location they filmed in was the absolute wrong place to try and film a futuristic version of New York. Because all I'm thinking is look at that incredible, amazing city that I bet would be so much fun to explore. Why the hell are you in a field? And then when it cuts to the hospital, if you find a picture of the hospital, it's literally a standalone hospital on the edge of a cliff by a beach. And it is not at all within this city. Like, you're looking
There's
at
nothing
this
around
city
it.
in New York.
It's
There's
just the
nothing
most
around it, like, at all.
Obviously placed thing, right?
It's just, it's literally just a CGI model dropped on a cliff beach. Yeah. And and again, I don't have the issue with CGI. Behind the hospital, there's this really great, like, slight outline of a planet in the sky, and I think it's done quite well. And I think they did what they could with the weather. I just don't know why they didn't film this in some kind of city and dress it to be like an alien city. Like,
they could have landed they could have landed in a alleyway and dress. I mean, I guess what they do is they go back again to New York for Series 3 for Gridlock, and then they do that. They land inside the city and they nail the look a lot more. No?
Not even. They then go underground because Martha makes a joke about it. He shows her the upper levels. He shows her what you saw. And again, I hate when they do this. It's literally a screen grab of like the last episode. And she's like, well, why couldn't we have gone up there? Because then all you do see are like gutters and smoky roads. And I'm like, I want to go to this city that we're looking at. But anyway, that's my thought.
I don't love it. I mean, the vision was apparently there. I don't quite get what one
I don't get what they were going for.
It put me off. It doesn't look good for a series opener, and knowing what they're able to do at this stage, having just seen the Christmas Invasion, it's frustrating. And for a series opener, it's a bit weak, and it puts me off.
I feel that too. I know we don't have tons of time, so I'm going to blip through my last couple points. And I hate to end on lows, but they are lows as well, which I think you'll quite enjoy. You'll enjoy me saying some things I didn't like. I agree with the argument for why people don't like this episode, that it's quite a lazy ending. It's that the Doctor mixed a potion that he sprayed on some of them and everyone got fixed. And I agree that's quite lazy. And one thing that was a real gripe for me when I was watching this, which I hadn't thought of before, is that you can only be infected by the flesh when they touch you, in their skin-to-skin contact. But as we all know from the last couple of years, even in the year of our Lord 2023, there are so many airborne diseases. So surely the second they opened that door into the like cave of green pods, the Doctor and Rose would have died. You know?
Yeah, there's a line like, no, the air's sterile. So I guess we have to believe that there's some like insane ventilation system happening inside the hospital that makes that an impossibility. That's the only way it can make sense. But I agree, the kind of like physical and being able to pass on antibiotics, I guess, or antivirals with a hug, it doesn't quite satisfy me. And this kind of like cocktail of medicines just kind of being like squirted out the lift, and that being the end, I was like, yeah. And I think, again, we don't really get the scale of the problem. We kind of led to believe that every level of this giant hospital is like full of zombified people, but we see maybe 2 people get converted into zombies, and that's it. And we don't really see the scale of the problem, and we know why, and it's because production constraints mean that they couldn't afford enough extras, they couldn't afford enough CGI to pull that off convincingly, so you don't get it. But I feel, I mean, looking back, it's difficult, right? You're looking back at something in such a different time. Like now, what I did think watching this was, I'd love to see this remade. I'd really like to see the same premise, maybe with a different ending, get made again. A lot of this was so good that I'd like to see it updated. Like, on script, it's so good.
This begs an interesting question. In a world in which, especially right now, remakes are very much the done thing, like sequels and remakes and stuff, I think there are a lot of Doctor Who stories that have amazing scripts and premises and would benefit from having been made in a later time with more money. I think that you're right. I think this is a candidate for, like, if you had to remake a Doctor episode, I think this would be a very good one to do it. There are a lot of things I would change, but other than, like you said, the ending, the resolution, none of them are story-wise. It's the limitations of the time.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I was even thinking that watching the Confidential for this one, they were filming these kind of windy scenes on the hilltop, and David does a bit to camera, and he's like, yeah, so this is meant to be an alien planet, and they tell me it'll all be fine. The computer people are going to do something clever and it'll look great. So they tell me. And I thought, God, I wish they did have this in good quality, because it'd be interesting now to see someone have a second pass at it. I don't think it would take that much now to probably make it look a lot better, but I mean, we'll never know. This is one of those things, we've talked about this before, right? Like, the way it's filmed in standard definition, it's incredibly difficult to upscale something like that convincingly. So in a way, it's kind of locked in the resolution you find it in.
I agree. Do you know what I would be up for? And I know that people say they don't want RTD2 to just be a nostalgia trip for his era, but I would love a one episode, like a one and done episode, return to New Earth, maybe post Gridlock, where he's meant to have had everything be fixed and it's become this like real paradise or something. And you properly get to see it in the manifestation. And then that way they can re-CGI or maybe like he lands on the cliff and you get the exact same thing and it looks exactly the same CGI. And he's like, now let's go closer. And he flies the TARDIS in, and you see it literally one of the few times you see the TARDIS fly. And maybe the Doctor and Ruby are looking out the TARDIS doors as you fly over New York.
Now that would be very nice. That'd be very nice.
That would be lovely.
That's a very nice idea. That's a very nice idea. I mean, I think New Earth as a location is probably done to death. I think going there twice already as season openers, and I think it being so at the extreme end of the timeline in the year 5 billion, and the fact we haven't really seen anything in between kind of like 200,000 and 5 billion. There's nothing really in the middle of that spot. There's kind of like the nearish few 100,000 year future, and then there's just the extreme end. We've gone a few times. We've gone 5 billion twice and a trillion once, and then that's kind of all we get.
Do you remember in series 1 when, I think it was in episode 2, the Doctor was trying to impress Rose and he went 1,000 years in the future and he said it's the new Roman Empire?
Yes!
That I'd like to see.
That's what I want. I want something that we'll never experience in real life. We'll all have perished. We'll all have perished by then. We'll all have died from the real heat death of the Earth by that point. And you just create a fake story for us. I like that. I mean, there's a bit of Doctor Who continuity we need to follow along at this point. I mean, in his first era, we were talking about kind of like humans reaching out for the stars, colonizing other planets by this point in our timeline. So he needs to get on and make that kind of canon in Ruby's world for the new series.
Mm-hmm.
Sam, I don't think I've ever led a camp or damp.
Yes, you have.
Like once, I think.
You have definitely. Okay, I was going to cut this out, but we'll keep this a little bit in. Alistair thinks he's never led a camp or damp before, and he definitely has. Can everyone please tweet Alistair or message him on Threads and tell him he's wrong?
Maybe twice. Sam.
Yes.
Are you ready to play camp or damp?
I'm ready. Promotion. I'm ready. Let's go, baby.
Who need guns when you have claws?
I can't believe we missed that out of our quote. That is camp to me. I think talking cat people are camp, period.
Yeah.
Rose, in Fear Her, when Rose is going after the cat, it's like, oh, hey, Puss, how you doing? And the doctor's like, oh, I'm not a cat person. After you've been attacked by one in a num's wimple, it kind of takes the fun out of it for you. And I love that. Yeah, camp. I think this is camp for me. Who needs guns when we have claws? I think that's so camp.
Okay, next up. Oh, goodness me. I'm a man. Yum. So many parts and hardly used. Oh, 2 hearts. Oh, baby, I'm being out of samba.
I was going to say camp anyway, and your delivery of it made it even camper. I love David's portrayal as Cassandra. I love your portrayal of David's portrayal of Cassandra. It's camp all round from me.
Jacob Dudman, I'm coming for your gig.
Just I'm coming for you, and I was like, same.
We love you, baby. Okay, everything Cassandra Rose says. Let me pick out a quote that I particularly like. I'll say it again because I like it so much. Watcha?
Everything she says is camp. I've written down a few of my favourites. I love, curves. It's like living inside a bouncy castle. When she first goes into
nice rear bumper. So good, so good, so good.
Camp.
This is a really specific bit for me that really got a laugh out of me, is when the doctor kind of goes in and he's like looking all smug and he's expecting the disinfectant process inside the lift. And she gets in her lift and she goes, floor 26. Thanks. It was
I like
thanks.
it too.
She has never interacted with an Alexa in her life. She does not know what to do with that voice control. She's like,
oh my
426.
Pre-Alexa. There you go. Well, imagine if you thanked Alexa every time you spoke to her.
I do. My mum insists on it. When I lived with my parents a few years back, many years back, I've never lived with my parents. A few years back when I lived with my parents, we had a Google in the kitchen, and if anyone was sarky with the Google, she did not like that. She was like, oh, don't be rude. Oh, don't be rude. Oh, stop it. You know, she really was like, can we, really did not like us being impolite to the Alexa.
Yeah. I don't love when you talk to Siri and it goes, mm-hmm. I'm like, excuse me.
Attitude.
Attitude.
I didn't quite get that. It's never a time that you actually said anything to her either.
Yeah.
I didn't quite get that. Yeah, because I wasn't speaking to you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I didn't quite get that. It's like, I'm not talking to you, Mary. Alasdair, would you like some fun facts of this episode?
Go on.
So, I'm not sure if you know this. I think you probably do. One of the Sisters of Plenitude is called Sister Jack, and she's played by Adjoa Andoh, who is a wonderful actress, most notably recently from Bridgerton fame, but who in the Doctor Who universe is better known as playing Martha's mum in the next series, Series 3.
I did know that, and I did actually recognise her in this.
Oh, that's amazing. I wouldn't have.
Yeah, even through the prosthetics, I could see her voice. I could see her voice. I could recognise her eyes and hear her voice.
Russell T Davies explains during the audio commentary for the original script, he said that the face of Bo was going to die at the end of the episode, and the only way the Doctor could cure all the diseased was to kill them all, basically. But then he read Stephen Moffat's introduction segment in the Series 1 shooting scripts book, which we've spoken about before, in which Moffat good-naturedly mocked Davies, saying, quote, he creates interesting characters and then melts them. And this is what made Davies decide to have them all survive at the end and have it be a lot more of an optimistic ending.
I like that, but my God, what were they thinking with that much
Genocide.
Of a dark ending in this one? Yeah, very heavy for an opener. I did like the Face of Bo's exit at the end of this episode. It feels like the Face of Bo in the end wasn't really needed for any reason apart from for them to go to the hospital for some reason. Yeah. And at the end of it, he's like, oh, Bo, you meant to tell me your secret. And he went, no, that'll be a better time. Goodbye.
Good. It's the energy of "you'll never see me again," but instead it's "you'll see me again." Like,
you'll see me again. He literally says something along the lines of like, "Enough's happened today. Goodbye."
And one final little fun fact that I thought was interesting. We've already said before about how Billy had asked for a more comedic role in this episode to counterpart the more serious material that she'd done in series 1. But according to David Tennant on the audio commentary, they wanted to have a very slight visual difference between when she was playing Rose and when she was playing Cassandra. So every time that she played Cassandra, she had a slightly different shade of lipstick on. And she also wore a Wonder Bra in all the scenes where she played Cassandra.
Now, I will say, I did notice that Rose is looking breasty at a certain point in this episode.
The bubbies are bubbing.
And I thought she'd maybe just undone a button, but that would make more sense if maybe she undid a button and pushed up.
I think she undid a couple buttons and had them pushed up.
Right. I guess I maybe there's an idea that like Cassandra in the in-between would have taken the time even to maybe shuffle to a New Earth bathroom and stuff her bra. I mean, I can believe that she'd have taken a moment to do that.
I can believe so too. And this isn't a fun fact, but it's a fun fact from me. I think that the DVD cover for this, I actually put a little picture. Me and Alasdair have this little Google Doc that we share when we record these, and I put a picture of it right at the bottom of this doc.
I see it.
Is one of my favourite DVD covers for Doctor Who. It was when Series 2 had like the weird like melty metal colours around the edge, and there's a promo picture of David and Billy in the costumes from this episode, and I've never seen this photo used anywhere. You know how they have photos they like, and they use them all the time? There's like the back-to-back Doctor and Rose, and there's that one of them like in front of like a swishy whirly like time vortexy thing. They use them all the time. This photo I've never ever seen used for anything else, and I just love this cover for this episode.
There is like one photo shoot where she's wearing, I think, this purple top, and rather than use different photos or get more pictures done, what a lot of the books do is just recolor. You've heard this. They recolor the same top, and there's like an orange one, there's a red one.
I know which one it is. It's the blue jumper that she wears at the beginning of this episode. So she has that blue jumper that kind of, it has like a weird crinkle in the middle of it. And you'll notice, I actually have in my head that in the DVD cover for, I think it's volume 4 of series 2, it's for the finale, they have a picture of her like crouching down doing like a real like cool pose. And they photoshopped the colour to be turquoise to match the turquoise top she has on in those episodes, just hoping no one would notice, even though it's a different jumper.
I like that. That's funny.
I like it.
It's economical.
It's economical.
Whale,
did you enjoy this episode overall, Alasdair?
I had a fun watch. It was 45 minutes of my life. I can't be too mad about it. I was having dinner anyway.
This podcast is longer by quite a bit than New Earth. You could have watched New Earth and half of Tooth and Claw in the time you've listened to this episode.
You could watch New Earth and The Confidential quicker than you could watch this episode.
Dear listener, do you like that or do you hate it?
Listener, I hope you're on a 4-hour car journey like Nick was at the start, because this ain't time you're getting back.
And dear listener, please, as always, we would love to keep the conversation going, and we are happy to shout out anyone who throws nice comments our way. So
anyone,
keep them coming. You can always reach out to us on our Twitter if that's still a thing. Instagram. We are now recently on Threads and TikTok, all of which are at Wholala Pod. And as always, you can rewatch old episodes of the podcast on our YouTube channel, also at Wholala Pod.
Absolutely. And if you have a moment, we would really appreciate if you would leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcast. Leaving us a review really helps us find new listeners. And that is what this is all about.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for taking this trip to New Earth with us. And we will see you next week.
We'll see you very soon. Have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.